You bring up an idea. You put an idea forward in a meeting. Someone nodded along. They said, it sounds great. Really? And then over the next week, you watched it quietly not happen. The follow-up didn't come. The thing they said they'd handle sat untouched. And then in the next meeting, they mentioned quite casually that they had some concerns all along. Nothing they did was refusal. Every single step was agreement. Yeah, sounds good, happy to. But the idea died anyway. And it died in a way where no one could point to the moment they killed it. Most people stop here. They call it passive aggression, and they mean the hidden opposition, the resistance that you can feel but you can't quite pin down. But that only names what you can see from the outside. It doesn't tell you what passive aggression actually is. So let me go the other way. Not the signs, not how to handle these people, but what's happening inside the person doing it. Because passive aggression isn't a personality. It's a solution, a bad one, but a solution to a real problem. Here's the problem. The resistance is real. The person genuinely doesn't want to do the thing, or they resent being asked, or they disagree with where it's all going. That part is honest, but somewhere they can't quite see, they've decided they're not allowed to say so. Saying no directly isn't available to them, so the refusal exists, and the permission to voice it does not. And it has to go somewhere. Let me give you a way to watch this happen. I work in a framework I call psychological architecture. It looks at psychological life through 4 domains. There's mind, which is how you read a situation. Emotion, which is what the situation stirs up in you. Identity, which is your sense of who you are. And meaning, which is what the whole thing ends up amounting to. The reason I separate them is to show you that they don't stay separate. Push on one and the others move. That's the part worth watching, and is what we're about to do here. For example, the pressure begins in identity. Picture someone who needs to be seen as agreeable, a team player, someone who doesn't cause friction. That self-image is load-bearing. They need it to feel like themselves. Saying a flat no to someone's face would break it. Now they get handed something they don't want, a plan they think is wrong, a request they resent. And emotion does what it's supposed to do. It generates opposition, real and in its own way appropriate. But that opposition arrives at a locked door because identity has already ruled, I'm not someone who refuses people. I'm not difficult. The direct no can't come through the front. So the contradiction has to be organized, not the problem, the contradiction. Mind reorganized the situation so the conflict never has to become explicit. Excuse me. Say yes now and let the no happen on its own later. Agree to the task and then let it slip. Nod at the idea, then let it starve. Each step keeps its innocent reading. It was a busy week. It slipped my mind. I didn't have concerns. I have other things on my plate. Every piece of the resistance carries a reading that isn't hostility. And here's where the loop closes in meaning. The opposition wins. The thing they didn't want doesn't happen. The plan stalls. But because it was never stated, what the whole episode comes to mean is something they can live with. I stayed agreeable. I never made it difficult. I didn't say no. The significance that settles out is, this is how someone like me gets to say no, which is exactly why it comes back. The person now understands themselves as someone who stayed agreeable while the opposition still won. Nothing had to be said. Nothing had to be owned. So the next time opposition shows up at that locked door, it already knows the route around. That's the whole architecture. The person isn't just being unreliable. They've built a structure where the only way to refuse is to refuse without ever saying it. The dropped task, the late reply, the concern raised too late to matter. That's a no taking the one road the person left open for it. And once you can see the structure, the behavior stops looking like flakiness and starts looking like what it is: someone at odds with something they won't let themselves say out loud, winning quietly and leaving you to deal with the wreckage they can always deny.